Ladies and gentlemen, this one is an absolute privilege to host. Sorry, it's me again. Some of you will remember who are old enough, 1996, and I said it to Michael earlier. I remember watching him run 19.32 and staring at the TV in utter disbelief that somebody could run that fast. He's won a bucket load of gold medals. He's broken more records than he can probably count, and now he's moving and taking athletics into the next era. Please give it up for the legend, Michael Johnson.
Calling all rivals, only the fastest. Calling the grudge holders who would sell it all to break the tape. I accomplished everything you dream about. 4 gold medals, 8 world championships, cover of Time magazine, all that. But I never got to face my most bitter rival under the bright lights. 4 times every year. Real money on the line. That's probably why you don't even know his name. Calling all rivals. We're about to change this game.
Thank you.
So normally when we do these things, we have people introduce themselves, but we don't need to do that. So instead, I'm going to just ask you. I was like, "How's it going? What are you doing here at Cannes?"
Yeah, I'm talking to you. It's going great. It's great. It's great. Just sitting here talking to you, hanging out in Cannes, trying to, pace myself. First time I came here a few years ago, I went to every party that I was invited to, went to everything that I was invited to, and I learned that I probably shouldn't do that, and I need to pace myself a little bit more.
You're a rosé rookie.
I was. Now I'm a veteran, and I know better. Yeah.
So athletics is one of the oldest sports in the world. Arguably the oldest. Some people would say wrestling, but I think athletics is...
Athletics was first. I mean, if you had to chase the guy first before you could actually wrestle him, so we were first.
This is true. So athletics, like everything else, is competing for eyeballs. It's competing against other sports, entertainment, you name it. So, I guess my question is, why is now the right time to bring athletics back to the masses on a more frequent basis?
Yeah, I think, this sport is perfect for today's audience. I mean, so with Grand Slam track as an example, 2/3 of our races take place in under 1 minute. So it's quick, it's fast, and the content is just amazing from a storytelling standpoint because we can tell the story in a couple of minutes. We can give you the protagonists, the heroes and the villains. We can set it up. We can actually run the race and then celebrate it on the other side in 3 minutes. And that content is just, and what we're seeing with Grand Slam track is our content on social, the engagement level is extremely high because of that. So if you think about, a basketball game or a football match, right? You can take a highlight out of that game and it may be compelling, but it's not the entire story. We can give you that same time of highlight or even quicker, and it is the entire story from start to finish. And we have so many. So our Grand Slam track events are 2 days, a Saturday and a Sunday. Each one of those days we have 12 races, right? But we have 8 different athletes in each one of those different groups. So we have multiple stories and multiple personalities, an extreme variety of different personalities.
You and I touched on this briefly earlier, and we talked about sport being about storytelling, and I was talking about, the greatest sports movies ever made. Rocky only has 6 minutes of boxing in it. Days of Thunder has 7 minutes of motor racing. Sport's always been about storytelling, but at what point for you does sport become entertainment, or vice versa?
Yeah, I think sport has always been a particular type of entertainment, right? But I think what you're seeing now is that it's starting to blend more over into traditional entertainment as well with the storytelling element. So if you think about the athletes in sport, and their backstory, or what's happening with them. Outside of their athleticism, outside of their career as an athlete, fans are interested in who they are, their lives off the track or off the pitch or off the court, and that becomes a source of entertainment for folks. So the storytelling around sport, you're seeing now leagues are being very intentional about that, very intentional about the storytelling element. investing in the storytelling element of it, not just the story of the competition itself, but the backstory of the athletes as well. So it's starting to blend a bit more over into traditional entertainment and the storytelling element, what you're seeing with all of the documentaries and all of the sort of behind the scenes and shoulder content of all of the different leagues.
'Cause back in the day, it was about training, getting in the blocks, and then just going. And you didn't have to think about any of that part of it. How are you seeing athletes react to this kind of new era, effectively, as well as obviously, with Grand Slam track, how they're reacting to new fans, new prizes? It's a much bigger universe for these athletes.
It is, and I mean, it's the one thing that for me, where I'm a little bit envious of today's athlete, we didn't have social media, so we had to rely on traditional media. I had to rely on traditional media to build a brand, so you have to go do wild things like wear gold shoes, which is a huge risk, because if you don't win the gold and you get silver, it's bad, right? So, but they have social media, so they are able to connect with fans in a way that we weren't able to and go direct. And that's what we're seeing with Grand Slam track. Our athletes are already doing an amazing job of connecting with fans, curating and developing their own content that they're putting out there. They just needed a platform like Grand Slam track to help them with that. But this generation of athletes, I mean, they grew up with social media, so they're very savvy with it. It's not, something that they don't understand. They certainly appreciate it, but it just comes so natural to them. So they lean heavily into it, and I think that it's something that you have to be across and aware of, but no different than how we had to be across, and aware of how we navigate traditional media in order to build our brand. So it's the same thing, but just a different tool. And this is a much more powerful tool that they have than what we have. But you have to understand that that is the game. It's not just playing the game, learning your craft, and perfecting it, but it is also understanding how you use the tools that are available to you to build your brand off of the sport.
It's interesting you talk about the gold shoes, because I remember that, and I love that moment. I'm like, you cannot lose. If you lace up a pair of gold shoes and you're running, second's not an option. So over your career, I mean, you had a stellar career as an understatement. You utterly dominated. How did you keep it at that level for nearly a decade?
Yeah, you have to keep the sport first. And that is one of the things that was easier then when we didn't have social media. You have to keep the sport first. And it's, understanding what drives you as an individual, what drives you. And for me, it was the goals that I had. In the first half of my career, what drove me was, beating people. Sounds diabolical, but it was really fun just beating people, right? And by the second half of my career, I knew that, I'm going to win the races as long as I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and I'm delivering from a training standpoint. I'm going to win the races. So where does the motivation come from after that? Then it was about making history and doing things that had never been done in the sport. So it's really, those people, those athletes who are able to consistently deliver at the highest level typically will have three things in common. One, they obviously have tremendous talent. You're just born with it, right? More so than anyone else. But the margins in professional sport are pretty small, right? Everyone at that level is extraordinarily talented. But the second thing is then a work ethic, which is the thing you hear about all of the time, that these great athletes work really hard, they're dedicated and committed. But dedicated and committed to what? The greats are dedicated and committed to the hard things. They're committed to the things that I craved criticism from my coach. I wanted to understand what I wasn't good at, because I knew that's where the opportunity was going to be to get better, right? But also it's, understanding the sport and understanding it, from a cognitive standpoint better than most. And then third is understanding how to get the best from yourself in those moments. So, for track, which, as a sprinter, with all due respect to other sports, which means I'm going to disrespect those sports, we don't have a next year. If you don't win this year, there's no next year, right? There's no halftime to make an adjustment. So when you're standing behind the blocks before the gun goes off, you know that, okay, in 19 seconds from now, I'm either going to be the champion, Olympic champion, or I'm not. That takes tremendous preparation and then an understanding of how, in that moment, you deliver your best performance.
You mentioned social media earlier, and that you wish you'd had it at the time. Obviously, knowing what you know now, you're a master of media and all the rest of it. But do you think it affects some athletes in a way that they are not living up to their full potential, in the same way perhaps you lived up to your potential because you didn't have that distraction at a young age?
Yeah, I'm sure that affects some athletes. There's certainly some. But, if you really want it, you're going to figure out a way. So it's just a matter of figuring out how you navigate that. I don't think that that's a widespread problem. I don't think that there are, loads of athletes who have this extraordinary talent and could be amazing and could be great who are missing out because they're so consumed with social media or because they are, affected by social media. Because that's the other side of it. It's not just when they're so busy building a brand that they're not focused on the sport. It's also, the idea that, when I was competing, everybody had an opinion about me, I'm sure, but I didn't have to see it. Now you get to see it. Everyone gets to broadcast their opinion about you through social media, and it becomes really difficult for some athletes. So that's where management teams come into play. That's where, look, you enter the world as an athlete as it is, and one of the things that makes it so great is people love sports. They have opinions about it. They're passionate about it. They love or hate you as an athlete. And that's their right as a fan. And you have to know that, and you figure out how to navigate it. But yes, there are certainly athletes, I'm sure, out there who, look, there are some athletes who have been able to monetize and build a brand off the back of the sport without having to be the absolute best, because that's definitely, it's not really the thing anymore. There's being great in the sport and being a legend in the sport is one thing. And then there's being popular and building a brand. That's another thing. They don't have to necessarily be the same.
Now, we're going to talk about pivots, because you pivoted after your competitive career. You went into media. You had a stellar media career, still going. It's been great. And now, with Grand Slam track, you've sort of moved into the business world from a leadership perspective. Did you always sort of think that may be the plan, that you would go from, track to media to business, or is it just sort of turned out that way?
No, when I was in university, I studied business. I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always knew this is the way that I would go. So I spent the last 20 plus years since I retired, not only as a television commentator and working for BBC in that role, but also as an entrepreneur, building businesses, investing in businesses, and it's been something that I've always enjoyed. And I've been able to take a lot of what I learned from my sports career and apply it to my life as an entrepreneur. It's very different, when as an athlete, I woke up every day knowing that I'm extraordinarily gifted to do this, to be a sprinter. When I first became an entrepreneur, I would wake up every morning knowing, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and I had to figure it out over time. But I've always enjoyed building businesses and working with teams, building teams. And so Grand Slam track is, just another one of those in a series of different entrepreneurial endeavors. This is probably my last one, though.
So the next 3 years are going to be huge for the U.S. in terms of, World Cup and then Olympics. It's the first time the Olympics have been in the U.S. since Atlanta, when you won the 200 and the 400 at the same Olympics. First time anyone had ever done that. As you look ahead to LA 2028, can you give us, this is like being a tipster, can you give us who you think, is it going to be the obvious names that we're hearing now, or do you think we might see some people come up the back straight in the next year and a half and make a real challenge to some of the big races?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. We're very excited about LA. I've been a part of that journey and on the board of LA 28 since we started the bid process way back in 2015. So we're really excited about LA with the Olympics and World Cup and all of the different sporting events that are coming. But in terms of look, if you think back to every Olympics has a couple of superstars, but if you think back over the last several Olympics, it's rare that you have that one person who just becomes a breakout star during the Olympics, and the Olympics is that thing that sort of catapults them into superstardom. So, a Michael Phelps, Usain Bolt, Simone Biles, myself, Carl Lewis, 1984. That was, that was the Olympics that inspired me. And it's rare because in order to get to that place, you have to do something. You have to make history at the games. You have to do something special. The medals are already printed up. If you just go take one of those, it's not going to actually catapult you into that sort of superstardom. You have to do something that no one's ever done before. So the 200-meter Olympic medal in 1996, it was going to go to someone. So was the 400. What wasn't guaranteed that it was going to go to the same person. So that was the history-making moment that I had, that I was able to take both medals. You take Carl Lewis in 1984, winning 4 Olympic gold medals. The only person who had ever done that before was Jesse Owens. So he did something that had been done before, but winning an Olympic gold medal in the long jump, 100 meters, 200 meters, 4x100 meter relay, that's special. Michael Phelps winning all of the gold medals in the pool. That's special, and breaking Mark Spitzer's record. So you have to do something special that has never been done before in order to get to that place.
And that's the lightning in the bottle we talk about. That's what creates the stories that we sit here, nearly 30 years after, and we're still talking about them.
Exactly.
So you're here in Cannes. There's a lot of CMOs rolling around. For brands looking to get involved with the next era of athletics and where you see this going, what's your sort of message to them?
Yeah, I think it's this sport is the sport of athletics is I think just perfect for today. We have when I hear other sports talk about being gender equal or having gender equal pay by 2030, like track has been gender equal pay since 1830. We've always been. This sport has always been equal in terms of the number of events for men and women and pay, right? So that is, I think, unique for this sport, as well as the diverse group of athletes that take part in it. So for Grand Slam track, we just finished our first season, and in the U.S., with our U.S. audience, 48% of our audience, our viewership is women. 48% for a sport. 44% of our viewership is Black. 12% Latina. 35%, 60% of our viewership is under the age of 35, right? So it's just and this is our league, but this is the sport as well. It's just a very unique sport. So I think it's just that very unique opportunity to reach those hard-to-reach markets. And the stories, because the athletes in this sport are so diverse, the stories are very diverse and very compelling.
So a couple of questions before we wrap. And this is one that I've just been dying to ask. Usain Bolt and you have 2 very different running styles, very different. And the speed you ran at and was just astonishing, and the speed he ran at was astonishing. Firstly, do you see a change in the way that sprinters are taught to sprint, as in the gait, the length of stride, and everything else? And secondly, when does somebody break 19?
Yeah. The best athletes, myself and Usain Bolt, are very good examples of this. We weren't the traditional type of sprinter, and we both broke world records because we had coaches who understood how to take the advantages that were there and maximize those, as opposed to trying to change us to be like the previous athletes in our events. So the best coaches are able to meet the athlete where they are and get the best from the talents, even if and be able to identify unique characteristics that can make an athlete faster. I ran much more upright. That made me faster, and my coach was able to identify that. Usain Bolt is 6'5". Typically, sprinters are a coach would push them to the 400 meters because you're too tall for the 100 meters. But his coach was able to figure out how to actually coach him and use the talent and the unique characteristics that he had to break world records. And then, so when does someone break 19? When does someone break the next world record? You just never know. That's the great thing about records. And in this sport, you're constantly racing against other people, but you're also racing against the clock, and you're also racing against yourself to be better, which is another thing that's so great about this sport, and it resonates with people because that's what everyone's trying to do. You're either racing against someone else or competing against someone else or for a job or whatever it may be, or you're trying to be your best, and that's the situation with this sport. So, when you find that next person who is, has a unique talent, unique ability, and they're able to, figure out how to unlock that talent to run faster, but also how to do it in the moment, because even though, you're running against the clock, you have to compete against the other athletes out there as well, and that makes it a very high-pressure environment. So someone who can figure all of that out will break 19, but when that's going to be, my guess is as good as yours.
It's going to be a while. Well, thank you for joining us today. We wish you all the best with Grand Slam track, and I hope your time here in Cannes is fruitful. Ladies and gentlemen, please give me a big round of applause for Michael Johnson.
Thank you.